Growing up, there were 2 daughters in the Ouellette house, but only one who mattered. My sister Monica is 3 years older. She came out of the womb performing, school plays, student council, the girl who could talk to any adult at any dinner party and make them laugh. My parents, Jerry and Diane Ouellette, Hartford, Connecticut, salt of the earth middle class, adored her for it. Dad managed a manufacturing plant. Mom did part-time bookkeeping. They valued 2 things above all else, appearances and obedience. Monica delivered both, flawlessly, every single day. I was the quiet one, the one with her nose in a biology textbook at Thanksgiving, while Monica held court at the table. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't difficult. I was simply invisible. There's a difference between being forgotten and never being seen in the first place. Here's a small example. 8th grade, I made it to the state science fair, the only kid from our school. Same weekend, Monica had a community theater performance. One guess where my parents went. When I came home with a 2nd place ribbon, Dad glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Reenie." He didn't ask what my project was about. He never did. I told myself it didn't hurt. I told myself I didn't need the attention. I poured everything into my grades, my AP classes, my applications. I figured if I couldn't be the daughter they noticed, I'd be the daughter they couldn't ignore. And for one brief, shining moment, I was. The day I got accepted into Oregon Health and Science University's medical program, 3,000 miles from Hartford, something shifted. For the first time in my life, my father looked at me, really looked at me, and said 5 words I'd waited 18 years to hear. But I'll get to that. First, you need to understand what Monica did when she realized the spotlight was moving. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday in April. I remember because Monica was visiting for the weekend. She was 22, working as a marketing coordinator at a mid-level firm in Stamford. Fine job, fine life. Fine was Monica's ceiling, though she'd never admit it. Dad read the letter at the kitchen table. His eyebrows went up. "Oregon Health and Science," he said, slow, like he was tasting the words. "That's a real medical school." Then he looked at me. "Maybe you'll make something of yourself after all, Reenie." It wasn't a compliment, not really. But it was the closest thing to one I'd ever gotten from him, and I held on to it like oxygen. Mom called Aunt Ruth that night. She called her sister. She called 2 neighbors. "Irene got into medical school. Can you believe it?" Her voice had a pitch I'd never heard before. Pride. Genuine, undiluted pride, directed at me. At dinner, I glanced across the table at Monica. She was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that stops at the mouth. Her eyes were doing something else entirely. Calculating, measuring, recalibrating. I know that now. At the time, I just thought she was tired from the drive. That week, Monica started calling me more. 2, 3 times a week. "How's packing going? Who's your roommate? What's Portland like?" She asked about my schedule, my classmates, my professors. She remembered every name I mentioned. I thought my sister was finally seeing me. I thought maybe my getting into med school had unlocked something between us. Respect, connection, whatever it is that normal sisters have. I was feeding her ammunition. Every detail, every name, every vulnerability. And I handed it all over with a grateful smile. 3rd year of medical school. That's when everything cracked open. My roommate, my best friend, was a woman named Sarah Mitchell. She'd grown up in foster care, no family to speak of, and she was the single reason I survived 1st year. When I called home once during a brutal anatomy exam week, and Mom said, "Can't talk, Reenie, Monica's having a rough day at work," it was Sarah who sat on our apartment floor with me and said, "Their loss. Now get up. We have cadavers to memorize." Sarah was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in August of my 3rd year. No family, no support system, just me. I went to the dean's office the next morning, explained the situation. He approved a formal leave of absence, 1 semester, caregiver status, paperwork filed, spot held. I would come back in January. It was all documented, all legitimate. I moved into the spare bedroom at Sarah's apartment, drove her to chemo, held her hand in the oncology ward at 3 in the morning when the pain got so bad she couldn't breathe. I called Monica to tell her. I don't know why. Maybe I still believed she was the sister she'd been pretending to be. I told her about Sarah, about the leave, about the plan to return in the spring. Monica's voice was syrup. Oh my God, Rini, I'm so sorry. Take all the time you need. I won't say a word to Mom and Dad. I know they'd just worry. 3 days later, she called our parents. I don't know the exact words she used that night. I wouldn't learn the full scope of her lie until 5 years later, when it unraveled in the one place none of us expected. But the damage was instant. The call came at 11 at night. I was sitting in a plastic chair next to Sarah's hospital bed. She'd had a bad reaction to the latest round of chemo, and they'd admitted her overnight. My phone lit up. Dad. Your sister told us everything. His voice was flat, arctic. The dropping out, the boyfriend, all of it. Dad, that's not... Don't. Monica showed us the messages. She showed us proof. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. What messages? What proof? Dad, I'm sitting in a hospital right now. I'm taking care of my friend. Monica said you'd say exactly that. A pause. She said you'd have a story ready. My mother got on the line. Her voice was shaking. How could you lie to us for a whole year, Irene? Mom, please, listen to me. I filed a leave of absence. I can show you the paperwork. I can give you the dean's number. Enough, Dad again. Don't call this house until you're ready to tell the truth. You've embarrassed this family enough. The line went dead. I sat on that hospital floor for 20 minutes. Sarah's IV beeped on the other side of the curtain. My phone screen still showed the call duration, 4 minutes and 12 seconds. That's how long it took my parents to erase me. 20 minutes later, a text from Monica. I'm sorry, Rini. I had to tell them. I couldn't keep your secret anymore. She wasn't sorry. She'd just executed the most precise strike of her life, and she'd done it with a broken heart emoji as a signature. I was 3,000 miles from Hartford. I had $46 in my checking account, and I had just become no one's daughter. I tried. I need you to know that. I tried everything I could from 3,000 miles away with no money and a dying friend in the next room. Over the next 5 days, I called my parents 14 times. The first 3 went to voicemail. By the 4th, Dad's number was blocked. Mom blocked me 2 days later. I sent 2 emails, one short, one long. The long one had my leave of absence paperwork attached as a PDF. I included the dean's direct phone number. I included Sarah's oncologist's name. I gave them every piece of evidence a reasonable person would need. Neither email got a response. I wrote a handwritten letter. Mailed it priority from Portland. 5 days later, it came back. Returned to sender, unopened. I recognized my mother's handwriting on the envelope. I called Aunt Ruth, Dad's younger sister, the only person in our family who'd ever treated me like I mattered equally. Ruth called Dad that same evening. I know because she called me back 40 minutes later, voice heavy. He told me to stay out of it, sweetheart. He said you've made your bed. Ruth tried to tell him about the leave of absence. Dad hung up on her. 5 days, 14 calls, 2 emails, 1 letter, 1 intermediary. All of it, every single attempt, rejected, blocked, or returned. And here's what sealed it. This wasn't new. This was the pattern of my entire life, compressed into its most brutal form. Every science fair they skipped, every recital they forgot, every time Monica's version of events was accepted without question while mine was dismissed. This was just the final, loudest iteration. On the 6th day, I stopped calling. Not because I gave up, because I realized they had chosen a long time ago. Monica just gave them permission to stop pretending. Sarah died on a Sunday morning in December. Quiet. Just the beep of the monitor going flat and the pale winter light through the hospice window. I was the only one in the room. No one from my family called. No one knew. The one person I'd told, Monica, was too busy tending to the lie she'd planted to care that the reason for my leave of absence had just stopped breathing. I organized a small funeral. 6 people came. Sarah's former foster sister drove up from Eugene. A couple of classmates. A nurse from the oncology ward who'd grown fond of her. I stood at the front of a chapel that could hold 60 and read a eulogy to rows of empty pews. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't broken, because I'd been crying for 3 months straight, and there was nothing left. That night, I sat alone in Sarah's apartment, our apartment. Her coffee mug was still on the counter, her jacket still hung by the door. I opened my laptop and stared at the application to re-enroll for the spring semester. Then I found it. Tucked inside Sarah's copy of Grey's Anatomy, our running joke, she'd bookmarked the chapter on the pancreas with a yellow sticky note that said, "Rude," was a card. Her handwriting, shaky but deliberate. "Finish what you started, Irene. Become the doctor I know you are. And don't you dare let anyone, especially your own blood, tell you who you are." She'd written it weeks before she died. She knew she wouldn't be there when I needed the push. I closed the laptop, opened it again, filled out the re-enrollment form. 2 options, crumble or climb. I chose to climb, not for my parents, not for revenge, for Sarah, and for the version of myself she believed in. I went back in January. No family support, no safety net. I picked up extra student loans, took a part-time research assistant position, and ate hospital cafeteria leftovers more times than I'll ever admit. Medical school doesn't care about your personal life. Anatomy exams don't pause because your family disowned you. 12-hour clinical rotations don't get shorter because you cried in the supply closet at 2 in the morning. So I stopped crying and started working. I worked like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. I graduated on time. No one from Hartford came. I matched into a surgical residency at Mercy Crest Medical Center back on the East Coast, a level 1 trauma center, one of the busiest in Connecticut. That's where I met Dr. Margaret Thornton. Maggie. 58 years old, chief of surgery emeritus, built like a steel cable wrapped in a lab coat. She became the mentor I desperately needed, and the mother figure I'd lost. 3rd year of residency, I met Nathan Caldwell. He was a civil rights attorney doing pro bono work at a community clinic near the hospital. Calm eyes, dry humor. The first person I told the full story to who didn't flinch, didn't pity me, didn't try to fix it. He just listened. Then he said, "You deserve better." 4 words. That was enough. We got married on a Saturday afternoon in Maggie's backyard. 30 guests. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. I'd sent an invitation to Hartford. It came back the way my letter had, unopened. Aunt Ruth was there, though. She cried enough for 2 parents. After the ceremony, Maggie handed me a sealed envelope. "A nomination," she said. "Don't open it yet, you're not ready." I tucked it in my desk drawer without asking questions. 5 years passed. I became someone they wouldn't recognize. Now, I need to pause here for a second. If you've ever been in a situation where your family refused to hear your side, where the truth didn't matter because someone else's lie was louder, drop a fire in the comments. And if you think my parents are going to regret this, type karma. Let's keep going. Because what happened next, even I didn't see it coming. January, present day. I'm 32 years old. I'm the chief of trauma surgery at Mercy Crest Medical Center. I have a house in the suburbs with a porch that gets good morning light, a husband who makes me laugh every day, and a golden retriever named Hippocrates, Hippo for short, who has never once judged me for eating cereal at midnight. It's a good life, a real one, built brick by brick with my own hands. But there's a specific kind of ache that never fully fades. It lives in the hollow space between your ribs, right where a family is supposed to be. I don't wake up crying anymore. I don't check my phone hoping for a Hartford area code. But every Thanksgiving there's a moment. Just a flash, where I set the table and count the plates and feel the absence like a phantom limb. Aunt Ruth still calls every Sunday. She's my thread back to that world. I never ask about them, but I always listen when she volunteers information. Mom and Dad are healthy. Monica got divorced 2 years ago. She's selling medical devices now. The irony is not lost on me. Last week, Ruth called with something different in her voice, cautious. "Irene, there's something I need to tell you about Monica. Something concerning." Before she could finish, my hospital pager went off. Trauma activation. I told Ruth I'd call her back. I never got the chance, because what Ruth was trying to tell me was already on its way, hurtling down I-91 at 60 miles an hour in a sedan that was about to run a red light. And within the hour, the thing Ruth was warning me about would be lying on my operating table, bleeding out, with my parents in the waiting room and my name on the chart. I just didn't know it yet. Let me back up. Because what Monica did wasn't a single lie, it was a campaign. Ruth had been feeding me pieces over the years, reluctantly, carefully, like she was diffusing a bomb one wire at a time, and the picture she painted was worse than I'd imagined. For 5 years, Monica maintained the narrative. At every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family gathering, she performed the role of the grieving older sister. "We don't really talk about Irene," she'd tell cousins. "It's too painful for Mom and Dad." She'd shake her head, lower her voice, let the silence do the work. But she didn't stop at silence. She added details. She told our grandmother that I was homeless. She told Uncle Pete's wife that she'd heard from mutual friends I was in and out of rehab. She told our mother, on Christmas Eve 2 years ago, that she had tried to reach out to me and I had refused, that I was the one who cut them off. She flipped the entire story. She said at Thanksgiving, Ruth told me once, voice tight with fury, "I've begged Irene to come home. She won't even answer my calls. I think she hates us." Meanwhile, I was 3 floors deep in an operating room saving a teenager's life. The genius of it, and I use that word with disgust, was that Monica didn't need my parents to forget me. She needed them to believe I had abandoned them. That way, their grief became proof. Their silence became justified. And she remained exactly what she'd always been, the loyal daughter, the only one who stayed. She wasn't protecting them. She was protecting her position. And there was one more thing Ruth told me, something I didn't learn until much later, that made the whole picture even darker. But I'll get to that. Nathan told me this over coffee one morning 6 months ago. He'd been sitting on it for 2 years. "There's something I didn't tell you," he said, setting his mug down carefully, the way he does when he's about to deliver bad news in his lawyer voice. 2 years ago, I got a call from HR at your old hospital. Someone using a fake name had contacted them asking about the employment status of Irene Ouellette. They wanted to know if you'd ever been disciplined, if your credentials were legitimate. I stared at him. "Who?" I had a colleague trace the inquiry. The IP address came back to Hartford. The kitchen went very quiet. Ipo's tail thumped against the floor. The coffee maker hissed. "She was trying to find something," I said. "Anything," Nathan confirmed. "Anything she could use to keep the story alive, to prove you were a fraud." "She didn't find anything." "No, because there's nothing to find." I wrapped my hands around my mug. Tight. I could feel the heat bleeding through the ceramic. "She didn't just lie about me once, Nathan. She's been hunting me." He reached across the table and put his hand over mine. "That's not sibling rivalry, Irene. That's something else entirely." He was right. Monica hadn't told a lie and moved on. She had built an architecture of deception, load-bearing walls, reinforced beams, and she'd spent 5 years making sure none of them cracked. Every holiday story, every whispered rumor, every fake inquiry was another brick. I could have done something then, called a lawyer, confronted my parents, blown the whole thing open. But I didn't, because life was about to do it for me, in the most brutal, public, and ironic way imaginable. And it started with a pager at 3 in the morning. Thursday night, January, 3:07 a.m. The pager dragged me out of a dead sleep. Nathan shifted beside me, murmured something. Ipo lifted his head from the foot of the bed. The screen glowed in the dark. Level 1 trauma. MVC, single female, 35, blunt abdominal trauma, hemodynamically unstable. ETA 8 minutes. I was dressed in 4 minutes. Driving in 6. The roads were empty and wet, that particular shade of black that January gives you in Connecticut. I ran through the case in my head the way I always do. Mechanism of injury, probable organ involvement, surgical options, motor vehicle collision, blunt abdominal trauma, unstable vitals, likely splenic rupture, possible liver laceration. I'd done this surgery 100 times. I badged in through the ambulance bay entrance and walked straight to the trauma bay. My team was already assembling. 2 residents, a trauma nurse, anesthesia on standby. I picked up the intake iPad from the charge nurse's station and swiped to the incoming patient chart. Patient, Monica D. Ouellette. DOB, March 14, 1990. Emergency contact. Gerald Ouellette, father. I stopped walking. The hallway noise, the beeping, the intercom, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, it all pulled back like a tide. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, I wasn't a surgeon. I was a 26-year-old sitting on a hospital floor in Portland, phone still warm in my hand, listening to a dial tone. Dr. Ouellette? My charge nurse, Linda, appeared at my shoulder. You okay? I looked up, blinked, set the iPad down. I'm fine. Prep Bay 2, and page Dr. Patel. I want him on standby. The ambulance siren wailed in the distance, getting closer, and behind that ambulance, I knew, before I could see them, were 2 people I hadn't faced in 5 years. The ambulance doors cracked open and the stretcher came fast. Monica was strapped down, unconscious, oxygen mask fogging with shallow breaths, blood on her shirt, one hand hanging limp off the side rail. The paramedics rattled off numbers, blood pressure dropping, heart rate climbing, 2 large-bore IVs running wide. Behind them, running, came my parents. My mother looked like she'd aged a decade, hair thinner, face drawn. She was in a bathrobe, slippers on the wrong feet. My father was in a flannel and jeans, thrown on in a panic. His face was the color of old paper. That's my daughter, he shouted past the triage nurse. Where are they taking her? I need to talk to the doctor in charge. The nurse, a woman named Carla I'd worked with for 3 years, put both hands up. Sir, family needs to wait in the surgical waiting area. The trauma team is already here. The chief is handling this personally. The chief? Dad grabbed Carla's arm. Get me the chief, now. Carla glanced through the glass partition toward the trauma bay. She looked at me, gowned, gloved, my badge hanging from my scrub top. She read the name, read it again. Her eyes went wide for just a fraction of a second. I gave a small shake of my head. Not now. Carla composed herself. Sir, the chief is prepping for surgery. You'll be updated as soon as possible. Please, the waiting room is this way. My parents were led down the hall. Mom was whispering prayers, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Dad kept turning back, looking through every window he passed. She's all we have, he said to no one in particular. Please, she's all we have. I heard it through the partition glass. Every word. She's all we have. As if I had never existed. I stepped into the scrub room alone. 30 seconds. That's all I allowed myself. I turned on the faucet, let the water run hot over my hands, looked at myself in the stainless steel mirror above the sink. Distorted, warped. The way everything felt right now, scrub cap on, badge visible, the face of a woman who had been surgically removed from her own family tree, now being asked to surgically save the woman who held the saw. Part of me wanted to walk out, call Patel, let someone else carry this, let my parents owe their daughter's life to a stranger, not to me. That would be cleaner, simpler. But there was a woman on that table with a ruptured spleen and what looked like a grade 3 liver laceration. She was losing blood faster than we could replace it. She was going to die in the next 30 to 40 minutes if the best surgeon in this building didn't operate, and the best surgeon in this building was me. I paged Patel directly. I have a conflict of interest. The patient is a family member. I'm disclosing it now and documenting in the chart. If at any point my judgment is compromised, you take the lead, no questions asked. Patel's voice was steady. Understood, Chief. I told Linda to note the disclosure in the nursing record. Everything by the book, everything on paper. Then I pulled on fresh gloves, pushed through the OR doors, and looked down at the table. My sister's face. Still. Bruised. The oxygen mask fogging and clearing. She looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. There were worry lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. For 3 seconds, she wasn't the woman who destroyed my life. She was a body on my table, and that was exactly how I needed her to be. Let's go, scalpel. 3 hours and 40 minutes. That's how long it took to rebuild what the steering column and the red light had torn apart. Ruptured spleen. We took it out. Grade 3 liver laceration. We repaired it with precision sutures, layer by painstaking layer. Internal bleeding from 2 separate mesenteric vessels. Clamped, cauterized, controlled. I didn't speak unless I needed to. Suction, clamp, lap pad, retract. My hands moved the way they've been trained to move, steady, deliberate, fast when speed mattered and slow when precision mattered more. The residents watched. They always watched during my cases, and I could feel their attention sharpen when the liver repair got tricky. I didn't falter. I couldn't afford to. At 6:48 a.m., I placed the final closing stitch. Monica's vitals were stable. BP normalized. Output clear. She was alive. Dr. Patel, who'd been standing silently in the corner the entire time, pulled his mask down. "Irene," he said quietly, "that was flawless. You want me to talk to the family?" I peeled off my gloves, dropped them in the bin, washed my hands, automatic, methodical, the same way I'd done it 10,000 times before. "No," I said, "this one's mine." I caught my reflection again in the scrub room mirror. Same face, same badge. But something had shifted. For 5 years, I'd been the daughter who disappeared. Now I was the surgeon who'd just pulled her sister back from the edge of death. Those two facts were about to collide in a waiting room 40 feet away, in front of my entire night shift team. I straightened my scrub top, checked my badge, took one breath. Then I walked toward the waiting room. The hallway had never felt so long. The waiting room had that fluorescent hush that hospitals get at 7 in the morning. 2 other families were scattered in the far corners. A television murmured weather reports to no one. And in the center row, sitting rigid, sleepless, terrified, were my parents. I pushed through the double doors, still in my surgical scrubs, mask pulled down around my neck, scrub cap off now, hair pulled back. My badge hung at chest level, printed in clean block letters anyone could read from 6 feet away. Dr. Irene Ouellette, MD, FACS, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Dad stood first. He always stood first. It was a reflex, the need to be in charge. "Doctor, how is she? Is Monica—" He stopped. His eyes had dropped to my badge, then rose to my face, then dropped to the badge again. I watched the recognition move through him like something physical, a tremor that started in his hands and climbed to his jaw. Mom looked up a half-second later. Her lips parted. No sound came out. Her right hand shot to Dad's forearm and clamped down, fingers digging into the flannel of his sleeve with a force that I would later learn left 4 bruises shaped like fingertips. 5 seconds of silence. 5 seconds that held 5 years. I spoke first. Calm, clinical. The same voice I used to address every family in this room. "Mr. and Mrs. Ouellette, I'm Dr. Ouellette, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Your daughter Monica sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration in the accident. Surgery was successful. She's stable and currently in the ICU. You'll be able to see her in approximately 1 hour. Mr. and Mrs. Not Mom and Dad." I watched that land. I watched it cut. Behind me, through the glass partition, Linda and 2 nurses were watching. They knew. By the look on their faces, they'd already put it together. My mother moved first. She took a step toward me, arms lifting, a sob already breaking through her chest. "Irene? Oh my God. Oh my God. Irene." I stepped back. Half a step. Polite. Unmistakable. She froze. Her hands hung in the air between us. Then slowly, painfully, dropped to her sides. Dad's voice came out like gravel dragged over concrete. "You're a doctor." "I am." "You're the chief." "I am." "But Monica said—" "Monica said what exactly?" He closed his mouth, opened it, closed it again. I could see the machinery of his mind trying to reassemble 5 years of certainty that was crumbling in real time. Mom was crying now, not quietly. "We thought you dropped out. We thought she told you I dropped out, that I had a boyfriend with a drug problem, that I was homeless, that I refused to contact you." I kept my voice level. No shaking, no tears. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in the shower, in the car, in the dark before sleep. I never thought it would happen in surgical scrubs under fluorescent lights. None of it was true. Not a single word. Through the glass behind me, I could see Carla press a hand to her mouth. A resident, Dr. Kimura, 2nd year, looked away, jaw tight. Linda set down her clipboard and stared. Dad tried to redirect. Old instinct. "This isn't the time or place, Irene. Your sister is in the ICU." "I know. I just spent 3 hours and 40 minutes making sure she survives. So yes, Dad, I'm aware of where she is." He had nothing. For the first time in my life, my father, a man who had never been at a loss for a decree, had absolutely nothing. The silence was doing the work I never could. 5 years of blocked calls, returned letters, ignored emails, none of it had made a dent. But standing here, alive and accomplished and wearing the proof on my chest, that was louder than anything I could have written in a letter. Mom reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. "The letters," she whispered. "You said you sent letters." 2 emails with my leave of absence paperwork attached. 1 handwritten letter, mailed priority. "You sent it back unopened. I recognized your handwriting on the envelope." She pressed her fist against her mouth. Dad stared at the floor. "I called 14 times in 5 days. I asked Aunt Ruth to talk to you. You told her to stay out of it." I wasn't accusing. I was reciting. These were facts, and facts don't need volume. Then Linda appeared at the door. She didn't know the full story. Not yet, but she had hospital business. "Dr. Ouellette, I'm sorry to interrupt." The board chair saw the overnight trauma log. He asked me to pass along. "The Physician of the Year Selection Committee sends their congratulations on tonight's surgical outcome." Linda said it the way she'd say anything routine. She had no idea she'd just detonated a second bomb. Mom looked at me, eyes swollen, mascara gone, bathrobe still on. "Physician of the Year? It's an internal recognition. It's nothing." I turned to Linda. "Thank you. I need to check post-op vitals. Excuse me." I walked toward the ICU corridor, measured steps, spine straight. I didn't look back, but I heard my mother's voice behind me, small and ruined. "Jerry, what have we done?" And I heard something I'd never heard before. My father, saying nothing. Because silence, for the first time, was the only honest thing he had left. 4 hours later, ICU, room 6, monitor beeping in rhythm, morning light angling through the blinds. I walked in for the standard post-op assessment. Vitals, drainage output, wound check, routine. Except nothing about this was routine. Monica's eyes were open, glassy, unfocused from the anesthesia, but open. She blinked at the ceiling, blinked at the IV pole. Then her gaze tracked sideways to me. She squinted. Read my badge. Read it again. The color drained from her face in a way I've seen before, but only in patients who've just been told their prognosis is bad. "Irene." Her voice was sandpaper. "Good morning, Monica. I'm your attending surgeon. You sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration from the accident. Surgery went well. You're going to make a full recovery. You're a doctor. Not a question. A reckoning. I'm the chief of this department, have been for 2 years." I watched it happen. The same spectrum Dad had gone through, but slower, because Monica was processing it through a morphine drip and what I suspect was dawning terror. Confusion first, then disbelief, then fear, and then, there it was, the expression I'd seen my whole life, the quick flicker behind the eyes, calculation. Even now, lying in a hospital bed with my sutures holding her liver together, Monica was trying to figure out how to spin this. "Irene, listen, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything to me." I nodded toward the glass door, where 2 figures stood in the hallway, watching, faces wrecked, eyes red. "You need to explain it to them." I updated her chart, checked the drain, left without another word. I didn't stay to hear what happened next, but the entire ICU floor heard it. Monica's room wasn't soundproof, and neither was the truth. "Okay, I have to stop here for a second. What do you think Monica told my parents when they walked into that ICU room?" Option A. She finally tells the truth. Option B. She doubles down on the lie. Option C. She plays the victim, again. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Because the next part of this story is where everything comes crashing down. I learned what happened from Linda, who heard it from the ICU nurse, who heard it through the glass. If you guessed option C, congratulations. You know my sister. The moment my parents walked in, Monica started crying. Big, heaving sobs that pulled at her stitches and made the heart monitor spike. "Mom, Dad, you have to believe me. I never meant for it to go this far. I was scared for her. Dad stood at the foot of the bed. His voice was barely controlled. Monica, Irene is a surgeon. She's the chief of trauma surgery at this hospital. I didn't know that. She said she sent letters, emails. She called 14 times. She asked Ruth to intervene. Mom's voice was flat, hollow. Is that true? She's exaggerating. You know how Ruth tried to tell us. Dad again, and this time his voice cracked. Not from sadness, but from the structural failure of everything he'd believed for 5 years. 2 years ago, Ruth called and said Irene was in residency. A surgeon. You told us Ruth was lying, that she was just trying to cause drama. Ruth doesn't know the whole story. What is the full story, Monica? Mom, screaming. In an ICU, the nurse at the station outside flinched. 2 rooms down, a patient's visitor looked up from their phone. And Monica, backed into a corner, IVs in both arms, my sutures in her abdomen, did what she always does. She pivoted from defense to offense. Fine, she's a doctor. Good for her. But she abandoned this family. She never called... Because we blocked her number, Monica. Dad's hand was on the bed rail, knuckles white. Because you told us to. The heart monitor beeped. The IV dripped. And Monica, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, had no script. Aunt Ruth walked into the ICU at 9:45 that morning. I'd called her from the scrub room after surgery, not to summon her as a weapon, but because Monica was her niece, too, and Ruth deserved to know. But Ruth came prepared. 5 years of silence will do that to a woman with a filing system and a long memory. She didn't sit down, didn't hug anyone. She stood in the middle of that room and said, I've been waiting 5 years to have this conversation, and I'm not waiting 1 more minute. She pulled out her phone, opened a folder she'd labeled, I found out later, Irene, proof. Inside, screenshots of every email I'd sent my parents in those first desperate days. The PDF of my leave of absence from OHSU, signed by the dean, stamped with the registrar's seal. My re-enrollment confirmation. A photo of my residency graduation, me in a cap, holding the diploma. Aunt Ruth next to me, the only family member in the frame. She held the phone out. Mom took it with trembling hands. And here, Ruth said, swiping to a text thread. This is from Monica, sent to me 4 years ago. She read it aloud. Don't tell Mom and Dad about Irene's residency. It'll just confuse them. They're finally at peace. The room went still. Monica stared at the ceiling. Her jaw was set, but the calculation was gone from her eyes. What replaced it was something I'd never seen there before, the look of someone who's run out of rooms to hide in. You told me to keep quiet for the family's sake, Ruth said, looking straight at Monica. But this family hasn't had peace. It's had a 5-year blackout. Ruth turned to my parents. And you two, you let this happen, not because you didn't love Irene, but because loving Monica was easier. Nobody argued. There was nothing left to argue with. Mom sank into the chair beside Monica's bed, but she wasn't looking at Monica anymore. She was scrolling through Ruth's phone, reading my emails one by one. Her lips moved as she read. She stopped on the last one, the one I'd sent the night before my residency graduation. I know what it says. I've reread it 100 times in my own sent folder. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I graduated from residency today. I wish you were here. I'm still your daughter. I never stopped being your daughter. Mom doubled over in the chair. Not crying. It was beyond that. It was the sound of someone meeting the full weight of a mistake they can never undo. Dad stood at the window, his back to the room, his shoulders shaking. Aunt Ruth told me later it was the first time she had ever seen her older brother cry. In 62 years, not once. Not at their mother's funeral. Not when his business nearly went under. Not ever. He cried now. Silently, facing the parking lot, while the monitor beeped behind him. Monica lay in the bed. She'd stopped talking. The IV dripped. Her eyes were fixed on a point on the ceiling. There was nothing left to perform, no audience that would believe her. The persona she'd worn for 35 years was lying in pieces on the linoleum, and no amount of charm or tears or clever reframing was going to put it back together. You missed her wedding, Jerry. Ruth's voice was quiet now, spent. Nathan's father walked her down the aisle. Do you understand what that means? Dad didn't turn from the window, but he spoke. 4 words, low, cracked down the center. What have we done? Not a question. He wasn't asking. He was convicting. And knowing the truth and knowing what to do with it, those are 2 very different things. I came back that afternoon. End of my shift. 22 hours since the pager woke me. But who's counting? My parents were still there. Of course they were. Where else would they go? Back to the house where they'd spent 5 years pretending they only had 1 daughter? Mom stood up the second I walked in. Her face was swollen, eyes nearly shut from crying. Irene, baby, I'm so sorry. I held up my hand, gently, but firm. I hear you, and I believe you're sorry, but sorry is a word. It's a starting place, not a finish line. What I need is time. Dad turned from the window. He looked like he'd aged 5 years since this morning. We want to make this right. Then you need to understand something. I kept my voice even. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. The kind that only comes after you've burned through every other emotion, and what's left is the truth. Clean and simple. I'm not the girl you sent away. I'm not the girl who begged you to listen for 5 days from 3,000 miles away. I'm someone who built a life, a whole life, without you. And if you want to be part of it now, it will be on my terms, not Monica's, not yours, mine. Dad opened his mouth. Old reflex. Then he closed it. And nodded. A small, devastated nod. I looked at Monica on the bed. Her eyes were open, watching me. When you're recovered, I said, you and I are going to have a conversation, a real one, but not today. Today, you're my patient. I don't mix the two. I left. Spine straight, steps measured. I didn't turn around. I'm not closing the door, but I'm the one who decides when it opens, how wide, and who walks through. 2 weeks later. Monica was discharged. Her incision was healing, the rest of her, not so much. I chose the location, a coffee shop in Middletown, halfway between her apartment and my house. Neutral ground. Nathan came but sat at a separate table near the window, pretending to read briefs. He wasn't pretending. Monica walked in looking like someone who'd been hollowed out. She'd lost weight. Surgery plus not eating will do that. And the confidence she usually wore like cologne was gone. For the first time in my memory, my older sister looked exactly her age. She sat down, wrapped her hands around a cup she didn't drink from, stared at the table. I didn't do preamble. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to list every lie. You know what you did. What I want to know is why. Silence. Long enough that the barista called someone's name and it echoed off the walls. Then quiet. Because you were going to be everything I wasn't. And I couldn't handle it. I let that sit. That's honest. First honest thing you've said to me in 10 years. I'm sorry, Irene. I know you are. But sorry doesn't give me back the years. Sorry doesn't put Dad at my wedding. Sorry doesn't unsend that box Mom shipped back to me. My high school graduation things. Returned like I was dead to her. She looked away. Her eyes were wet. Real tears. I know the difference now. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. I also called your medical school. Twice. I tried to get them to revoke your leave of absence. I told them you'd fabricated the caregiver documents. The coffee shop hummed around us. I stared at her. Your dean wouldn't listen to me. He protected you. He didn't protect me, Monica. He believed the truth. That's not the same thing. I leaned back in my chair, took a breath. This was the part I'd mapped out the night before, sitting on the kitchen floor with Hippo's head in my lap while Nathan reviewed it with me like a closing argument. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I said, but I'm setting conditions. Monica nodded, small, defeated. You will tell the truth, the full truth, to every family member you lied to, every aunt, every uncle, every cousin who spent 5 years thinking I was in rehab or living on the street. You will correct every single story. I will. And you'll do it in writing. An email to the family group, all 47 people. Ruth will confirm everyone receives it. Another nod. I met with my parents separately the following week. Nathan drove me. We sat at their kitchen table, the same table where Dad had read my acceptance letter all those years ago. The same table where Monica had smiled with just her mouth. "I'm open to rebuilding," I said. "But I need you to go to family counseling, both of you. Not for me, for yourselves. You need to understand why you believed a lie about your own daughter and never once picked up the phone to check." Dad's jaw tightened. "We don't do that in this family." "That's exactly why we're here, Dad." Mom put her hand on his arm, gently. "Jerry, please." He looked at her, looked at me. Something behind his eyes cracked. Not open, not yet, but cracked. "Fine." I stood to leave, then turned back. "One more thing. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. That happened. We can't undo it. But if you want to know your future grandchildren, you start now. Not with grand gestures, with consistency. Apologies expire, boundaries don't. That's the difference between sentiment and structure." 1 month later, the Physician of the Year Gala, 200 people in the ballroom of the Hartford Marquis Hotel, surgeons, department heads, hospital administrators, donors, board members, crystal glasses clinking, name tags on lanyards, a string quartet playing something classical that nobody was listening to. I wore a simple black dress. Nathan was at a front table, looking like he'd been born in a suit. Maggie Thornton sat beside him, arms crossed, the faintest smile on her face, the one she reserves for moments she's been engineering for years. The MC stepped to the podium. This year's Physician of the Year, a surgeon whose clinical excellence, composure under pressure, and commitment to her patients have set a new standard for this institution. Dr. Irene Ouellette, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Applause, standing ovation from the surgical staff who'd seen me work. I walked to the stage, spotlight warm, podium solid under my hands. I kept it short. 5 years ago, I almost quit. Not because I couldn't do the work, but because I lost the people I thought I needed to keep going. What I learned is that the people you need aren't always the ones you're born to. Sometimes they're the ones who choose you. I looked at Maggie, at Nathan, at my team in the 3rd row. Then I looked at the back of the ballroom, last row. 2 seats Ruth had quietly arranged. My parents, Mom in a navy dress she'd probably bought that week. Dad in a tie he clearly hated. Both sitting with their hands in their laps, looking up at the stage with expressions I can only describe as grief and pride waging war on the same face. "And sometimes," I said, "the ones you're born to find their way back, late, but here." Mom covered her mouth. Dad stood. Applause filled the rest. After the gala, Dad found Nathan near the coat check. He stood in front of my husband for a long moment. "I owe you an apology. I should have been the one." Nathan, gracious to his core, extended his hand. "With all due respect, sir, you should have been a lot of things, but we're here now." They shook hands. Dad's eyes were red. He didn't let go right away. Monica sent the email on a Wednesday night. Ruth confirmed delivery to all 47 addresses. I didn't read it until the next morning. Nathan brought me coffee and set the laptop on the kitchen table without a word. He knows when to give me space. It was 3 paragraphs. No excuses, no flowery language, just the facts laid bare. She had lied about my leaving medical school. She had fabricated evidence. She had maintained the deception for 5 years. She had deliberately prevented our parents from learning the truth. She ended with, "Irene never abandoned this family. I made sure they believed she did. That is entirely on me." The responses came in waves. Uncle Pete's wife called Ruth in tears. She'd repeated Monica's rehab story at a book club 2 years ago. Cousin David in Vermont sent Monica a one-line reply. "I don't know who you are anymore." Our grandmother, Nana June, 89, the matriarch who'd stopped asking about me at Thanksgiving because Monica told her it was too painful, called me directly. "I'm 89 years old," she said, her voice paper-thin but furious. "And I have never been lied to so thoroughly by my own blood. Irene, forgive an old woman for not seeing it." "There's nothing to forgive, Nana. You were lied to. We all were." Nobody organized a boycott of Monica. Nobody sent group texts declaring her dead to them, but the trust she'd stockpiled, the currency she'd been spending for 35 years, was gone. You could feel it in the silence after her email, in the replies that didn't come, in the invitations that quietly stopped arriving. No one punished Monica. They just stopped believing her. And for someone who'd built her entire identity on being believed, that was punishment enough. My parents started counseling in February. A therapist in West Hartford named Dr. Renna, calm, direct, the kind of woman who doesn't let you dodge a question. Mom took to it immediately. She'd been carrying the weight of her passivity like a stone in her coat pocket, and the first time Dr. Renna named it, enabling through silence, Mom broke down in the office and didn't stop crying for 40 minutes. That's what Ruth told me. I wasn't there. It wasn't my session to witness. Dad struggled. He went. He sat in the chair. He answered questions in as few words as possible. Dr. Renna told him, Ruth relayed, that his need to be right, his refusal to revisit a decision once it was made, had been the load-bearing wall of this entire disaster. Monica provided the lie, but Dad's pride cemented it into place. He didn't argue with her. That might have been the first sign of change. 3 weeks into counseling, Mom mailed me a letter, handwritten. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I failed you, she wrote. Not just when I believed Monica, but every time I chose peace over fairness. Every time I let your father's temper decide what was true. Every time I saw you standing in the doorway, quiet and waiting, and told myself you were fine, because it was easier than admitting I wasn't brave enough to fight for you. I read it at the kitchen table. Ipo was asleep on my feet. Nathan was in the next room, pretending not to listen. I didn't cry, but I held that letter for a long time. Then I opened the drawer where I keep things that matter. Sarah's card, my returned letters, the wedding invitation that came back unopened, and I placed it inside. Same drawer, different side. Progress isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just rearranging what you carry. Monica started therapy too, her own, separate from the family sessions. I know this because Ruth told me and because Monica mentioned it, briefly, awkwardly, the second time we met for coffee. We've had 3 of these meetings now. Each one short, each one stiff, each one slightly more honest than the last. The first time, she stared at her hands and said nothing useful. The second time, she told me about the therapy. The third time, she said something that actually landed. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I want you to know, I'm trying not to be that person anymore. I took a sip of my coffee, set it down. Then show me. Words are cheap in this family. They always have been. Show me with time. She nodded. Didn't push. Didn't perform. That was new. Do I believe her? Honestly, I don't know. I've spent a lifetime reading Monica's performances, and I'm still not sure where her acting ends and her actual self begins. Maybe she's not sure either. Maybe that's what the therapy is for. But I believe in the possibility of change. That's all I can offer right now. She carries my surgical scar on her body. 7 inches. Left upper abdomen, fading from red to white over the coming year. Every time she gets dressed, every time she catches her reflection, she'll see the mark left by the sister she tried to erase. The sister who, when it mattered most, held a scalpel with steady hands and chose the oath over the anger. I carry her damage in my memory. 5 years of silence, lodged somewhere between my ribs. We're even. In the strangest, most painful way 2 sisters can be even. And maybe, with enough time, enough real, unglamorous, consistent time, we'll find our way to something that isn't even. Something better. Something new. I'm sitting in my office at Mercy Crest. It's late. The hallway outside is quiet. That particular stillness hospitals have after the last visitors leave and before the night shift energy kicks in. My nameplate is on the door. My diplomas are on the wall. Not because I need to see them, but because the residents do. On my desk, a framed wedding photo. Nathan, Maggie, Aunt Ruth, 30 guests, a backyard in October light. No parents in the frame, but on the bookshelf next to it, a new photo, taken 3 weeks ago. Mom and Dad, standing on my front porch, coats on, looking slightly lost. Dad's hands are in his pockets. Mom is mid-smile, trying too hard but trying. It's awkward. It's imperfect. It's real. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, whether you're the one who was silenced or the one who did the silencing. I want to tell you something. The truth doesn't expire. It doesn't matter if it takes 5 days or 5 years. The truth has a patient way of showing up exactly when it's needed most. You can't rush it, but you can't outrun it either. I didn't get revenge on my sister. I didn't need revenge. I became someone who didn't need it. And that turned out to be the most devastating response of all. Not a scheme, not a plan. Just a life, lived fully, on my own terms. And if you're waiting for your family to see you, really see you, stop waiting. See yourself first. Build the life you deserve with the people who show up. And when the others finally turn around, let them find a door that you control. You decide when it opens. You decide how wide. You decide who walks through. That's not revenge. That's architecture. Sunday morning, first week of February. Light snow falling outside the kitchen window, the kind that doesn't stick but makes everything look like it's being gently forgiven. I'm making French toast. Nathan is grinding coffee beans, singing off-key to something on the radio. Ipo is stationed under the table, optimistic about crumbs. The doorbell rings. I wipe my hands on a towel and open the front door. Mom and Dad, standing on the porch in their winter coats. Dad is holding a bottle of orange juice like he's not sure